Let me start over, start off and give you a brief rundown.
Okay.
Let me turn this around a little bit. In 1965, I graduated high school. And because I was expected to, I went to college for a year. Although I enlisted in the second semester with a delayed entry program. And so I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to academics. And anyhow, I started in August of '66, boot camp. And after boot camp, and when I went to boot camp, it was 8 weeks, and it's normally 12 weeks, but they were rushing us through. They wanted us to get in the field. So after boot camp, I went to radio school, where I learned how to operate a radio and also Morse code. And that was interesting. Then after that, I was assigned to a unit called 1st Anglico, and you've heard of Anglico. And that was stationed, that was headquartered in Hawaii. So that sounds like good duty, but Hawaii was a terrible place for servicemen. It was just so expensive, you know, and we weren't very welcomed by the natives. But anyway, there about 6 months, and during that 6 months, sometime closer to the end of it, I wrote a letter to my commanding officer, which is verboten. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to go through the chain of command to your platoon and your company, blah, blah, blah. And anyhow, in the letter I said I want to go to Vietnam. I don't want to be around here anymore. So I called hell for that, but the next group that went to Vietnam I was in. And Anglico was stationed in Saigon, but had teams all over Vietnam, all up and down the coast, mainly because of a naval gunfire that we caught. And excuse me. And I was sent to Nha Trang. Have you ever heard of Nha Trang?
Is that south of Da Nang, I think, or north?
South.
Okay, south.
They call it the Atlantic city of the South China Sea. It was a beautiful city, and right on the water, and there were beaches, and it was a lot of fun. And we called it a hotel, but it was just a big house. 6 or 7 of us lived in that house instead of on a base or anything. And we had a Jeep. We drove to the headquarters when we needed to. And so it was nice. We each had a room. I got there around November, right before Thanksgiving, and spent Christmas there. And then New Year's was the Tet, that's the Vietnamese New Year. And that was the 30th, I think, of January. And so we were in our place of residence, whatever you call it. And at midnight, it was all hell broke loose. And when I say all hell, I mean noisy. It wasn't danger. And you know, people were shooting their guns in the air and throwing firecrackers. And so we went out on the balcony. We had a balcony about 4 flights up, and just watched. It was really great. Then we went back to bed. But not long after we went back to bed, we started hearing more explosions, and these were mortars. You can tell the difference. We said, "Oh crap!" So we met in a common area and said, "What do you do? What are we going to do?" And the consensus was, we aren't sitting here, we're going out there. So we did, we geared up and had a couple grenades each, rifle with a bunch of magazines, ammunition. And we left the hotel, whatever we call it, and there was always a guard at the entrance. There were sandbags in a semicircle and guard there. That guard wasn't there then. He's gone. So anyhow, we went downtown and we wound up at an intersection where there were like 5 roads coming together and it like spokes of a wheel. And there were Vietnamese civilians just acting like nothing was wrong. I mean, there were people on their bikes with the whatever stuff they were selling in these baskets stacked high, and they were just riding along. But where we were, up another spoke was a machine gun that was just mowing down anything that got in the path. So, and one guy went past us, we told him to stop, he didn't, and he got shot up. And we said, we got to get him. And then none of us were going to go out in that machine gun fire. So I said, I'll knock out the machine gun. I got a grenade. I said, if it's enemy, I'll frag it. If it's not enemy, I'll tell them to cut it out. That was my plan. And by the way, when I said we geared up, they geared up better than I did. I just had on flip-flops. I didn't have boots. So, and I'm walking up the street, parallel so I can go around behind. And I hear this voice saying "Dang Lai," which means halt in Vietnamese. And look around, and then I hear it again. And there were 3 Viet Cong crouched down behind a wall, but it was like a split rail fence. It wasn't any protection for them or for me. And I was so stupid. So I said, look, I'm an American, Meanwhile, they got up and they approached me. And there was, I'm sure, the same family, a grandfather, father, and son, and grandson. The youngest kid was maybe 12, 14. So anyhow, they're talking with me and arguing with me. It was like a negotiation. It was so insane. And I didn't even realize at the time, it didn't register that these guys are Viet Cong.
Oh.
And so they only had 1 rifle and 1 carbine. And that's all they had. And it turned out they had like 3 or 4 bullets in it. They weren't very well equipped. But 3 or 4 bullets can do a pretty good job on you. So I was going along, trying to make them understand I'm an American, like they didn't know that. And the kid, the grandfather, father, sent the kid to get my rifle. So the kid grabbed my rifle. I had a grip on it, and we're tugging back and forth. And finally, I just said out loud, "Fuck it," and I kicked him in the nuts and sprayed 3 of them, and ran back to the other 2 guys. And so fast I left my flip-flops behind. So anyhow, and what I said was, I killed a kid. So we went back to where the bodies were, and I'd only killed 2 of them actually. One of them got away, left, and he left a blood trail. So my 2 buddies followed the blood trail, and found him in a building. And he reached for his weapon or something, and they shot him.
May I ask one question, or?
Sure, I'll
Okay.
any.
Okay. Were you still part of Anglico at this time?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is still Anglican. So, I was pretty relieved. And we found a backpack outside of this house indicating Viet Cong was in there. And so we went there and kind of threw a grenade at it. And the front room, the Vietnamese were very, I guess they still are, very conscious of neatness and propriety. So anyhow, the front room was perfect. There was a bowl of vegetable or fruit on the table and a couch and a couple of chairs. So I threw the grenade, and then boom, I had never thrown a grenade in basic training and infantry training. The day they did grenade throwing, I was sick. and I expected it to, go boom, but it was a lot more powerful than I expected, and tore up the house, and that's basically it for that. And then we went down, there was an MP compound, and the MP compound, Army, we were the only Marines there, Anglico. The MP compound, we walked up to them and said, "What's going on?" And they said, "You wouldn't believe it. In formation, it looked like a company of NBA were walking down the street." And one of the guards yelled, "Halt, Dong Lai," and that's when all hell broke loose. The Recon started shooting at the MPs. The MPs didn't shoot back. You know why? They didn't have any bullets. So the Viacom ran across the street. There was this big old house there, and that's where they went in. So we were talking to these MPs, and one said there was a sniper in the tree down the street. At least that's what we thought. And then, of course, what's at the house. So we sat down, smoked a cigarette, sprayed the tree with our M16s, and then decided to go check out this house. So there's a corner and there's a wall about a little higher than waist high, and I happen to be first, so I'm walking along and get to the wall and where I can see over it. When I see over it, there's an NBA standing in the doorway. So I say, "Oh shit!" So I raised my rifle to spray him, but I was on semi-automatic instead of full automatic, so I got off a round. And he got off a round, and neither of us hit. And so I'm tucked behind the wall, and I decide I'm going to get this guy. So I stand up, and he was a smart guy. He was waiting for me to stand up, and he fired at me, and the bullet hit the top of the wall and split up. Little pieces went into my arm, and the main part of it hit a magazine in my breast pocket, an M16 magazine, and put a dent. It was sticking out from the other side. And I thought I saved that. I tried to save it, but it got lost somewhere along the line. Scared the living shit out of me. The part that hit the magazine knocked me back. It's pretty powerful. And I don't know what I didn't expect that. I thought it was hurt bad, and it wasn't, and it didn't penetrate. But it scared the shit out of me. So now we stayed there, and right next to this house with these NBA was another house which housed the Korean general, I believe, and there were a bunch of Korean troops there. And the Korean troops were out there with us. They were shooting at them, and one of them was prone next to a fence, like a gate that wasn't protection, shooting at the house, and he got it right between the eyes. That was another shot. So we're shooting, we used all of our grenades, and went over to the MP, said, "We need a grenade launcher, give us a grenade launcher." "Nah, we can't do that." These guys, it wasn't their fault. I mean, they were just guys, doing their duty. But the officers, the higher up, said, "No, we're not going to give these guys any weapons." I mean, it was crazy. So we went to the Koreans, and they brought out a case of grenades. And so we started lobbing them. One of the Koreans, one of the first grenades we threw from that box, pulled the pin through it, all off, wham, and it went about 20 yards. It was, we said, "Give me those grenades." So we stayed at that house for maybe an hour, and just shooting and not getting shot back. I mean, at least not much, not that I could tell. So we finally got tired of it and went back to the compound of our headquarters, which was in a hotel called the Grand Hotel. Real fancy, elegant, taken over by military now, but you could tell what it was, marble floors and all, really nice. And reported to our officer in charge, who was a naval officer. And Fowler, one of the guys, the officer said, "I hope you got that out of your system." And Fowler said, "Not in my system, sir. It's in my blood." And, we got a kick out of that. The OIC didn't. So that's pretty much what happened in Nha Trang. And one little minor thing, the officers' quarters had a flat roof, and they said, "We're going to send soldiers up there," mostly soldiers, but we were there too. And my mother had given me a .38 revolver that a friend of hers had taken away from her husband and gave it to my mother for safekeeping, years prior. And so I had that, and we were taking breaks, taking turns off duty. I was laying down on the deck, right at the top of the staircase, and I went to sleep. And when I woke up, somebody coming up the staircase, so I grabbed the pistol and pointed it at the staircase, and the fella came up. It was ours. He was ours. And so I put the pistol down and went back to sleep. And when I woke up in the morning, I opened my eyes looking right down the barrel of this pistol. I said, "I'm getting rid of this gun." So I did. Then I went up to a city called Tuy Hoa, which was a nice little village. And it was right on the ocean, the South China Sea. It was a MACV compound. Do you know what MACV was? Mm-hmm. So it was a MACV compound. Incidentally, Anglico was the only Marine unit directly responsible to MACV. So anyhow, they sent me there. I was the only Marine up there, and I was had my radio and a calling in guns if I needed them. And I flew in the backseat of observation planes, O1s. The O1's a single-engine Cessna, front and back seats, and that was kind of fun. I've always felt safe in that plane. Even if somebody was shooting at us, I just felt safe and I felt protected. Just foolish probably, but anyhow, I didn't get hit. And we were covering this one battle. I didn't have guns on. We were covering this one battle, and these O1s had weapons, and what they were supposed to have were white phosphorus rockets, so they could mark a target. What they often had was maybe the white phosphorus, but also high explosive rockets. Some of them even put machine guns under the wings. It was crazy. So that wasn't their mission at all. So there were these NVA or Recon on a roof, and Americans up here, and so we flew over and threw a grenade at them from the plane, and it exploded harmlessly. Also, what I did, not that time, but I did a few times, was fire my weapon out the window, and that was verboten. You weren't supposed to do that. The reason was the shells might get entangled in the machinery or the cables or whatever. So what? So anyhow, it was a picnic. We lived in the MACV compound, and I lived in a room with an army group, and I forget what they were called, but they would go to villages and hand out soap and toothbrushes and treat minor cousin scrapes for the people there. They were a good group of people. And there was an interpreter. He was a black guy, and he was telling me he was downtown one time in the village, and happened all the time. That wasn't unusual. But the woman behind the counter was talking to her husband or whoever, complaining about this nigger GI. And when he left, you know, he pretended he didn't understand. But when he left, he said to her in Vietnamese, "Thank you for helping me out." You know, one of those gotchas. And so the interpreter, driver, and medic. And they also knew the mayor of the town, Tuy Hoa. So we went to the mayor's house for dinner a couple of times. Really a nice place. And I got to feeling guilty. You know, you didn't come here for this. And I wrote a letter to my parents, and I said, I'm rejoining the Marine Corps. You know, I'm going to transfer up north. So I did. I transferred. I asked for Force Recon. Do you know what Force Recon is? So I asked for Force Recon, and you know, wondering, you know, they might give it to you, they might not. But the Force Recon was hurting, so they were happy to put me in there in 3rd Force. When I got there, the clerk, I don't know who he was, said, "What's your MOS, military occupational specialty?" I said, "Radio operator." He said, "Jesus Christ," he said, "try to stay alive till Monday, will you?" I said, "I'll try." But the CO sent me up on top of Hill 950, which overlooked Quezon, which had been abandoned by them. And it was a relay station. So there were a couple of us radio operators from Recon and a platoon of infantrymen. So we relayed messages from the bush back to the headquarters. That was probably the smart, it was a very smart move by the CO, because it gave me a chance to see what in the hell is actually happening, you know, what these guys are in the bush are doing. So I was there for a month. Then I came down and got into a platoon, into a hooch. They had wooden hooshes by the time I got there. And I was treated with respect. The infantry guys that went into Force Recon were not treated with such respect. They had to earn that respect. And I didn't, I found out later, much later, I didn't because I was Anglico. So Anglico, airborne outfit, you know, feeder group for the Recon. So that was good. But we went on patrols, and I was a corporal then. They promoted me when I left Anglico. I had been a lance corporal. And they didn't promote me or anybody while I was still in Anglico, because there was a table of operations, TO, where they only allow so many corporals, sergeants, etc. So there was no room for me as a corporal. But on the way out, they gave me my stripe, made me a corporal. And so I got assigned to patrol. Now, we were running 4-man patrols, and I'd say most of the guys running the bush were not First Recon trained, including me, of course. So I got assigned to this patrol, and the patrol leader was a lance corporal. And the patrol leader pulled me aside. He says, "You outrank me here, but when we're in the bush, I'm in charge." I said, "Fine." You know, I wasn't going to take charge of something I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So one of the first patrols, we were trucked into this naval base on the Quaviet River, and then we would walk into onto the beach, to South China Sea, and walk down and see what we found. So one of the first patrols, I was tailing Charlie. There was a point, patrol leader, radio man, and tailing Charlie. But those roles got shuffled all the time. It gives somebody a break. And So I was tailing Charlie, and so tailing Charlie looks behind, make sure nobody's sneaking up on you. So I'm looking behind. And then I turn around and my patrol's gone. I lost one. So they were somewhere ahead of me. And I couldn't say, hey you, because it was supposed to be stealthy. So I crouched down, kind of duck walked fast, just find them. And they were smart. They knew I was stupid, I guess. They knew I wasn't there. So they were waiting for me, and that was good. Made me feel real good. On another patrol on the beach, and on the beach, for camouflage, we didn't wear green. We wore long underwear, white long johns, and we were practically invisible on the beach. It was white sand. It was a beautiful idea by just one of the guys that was there, one of the mass corporals. It was a brilliant idea. And we had a starlight scope, and you know what that is.
The night vision one? Or?
Yeah, the first night vision one.
The big thing?
It was pretty big, and you couldn't open it in daylight or it would blow out all the circuits or something. It was, like I said, the first one. But anyhow, we're looking through that. We're stopped, which we would do, look around, and the patrol leader's looking through that, and he says, quiet. He says, we got two coming down. One's behind the other. Oh, shit. So they approached, and we were ready, and we didn't open fire. And it's a good thing. It was like a grandfather and son, or father-son. They were going out to their boat. They may have been Vietcong, I don't know, but they were appeared at least harmless to us. And the reason he thought there were two, one in front of the other, was perception. It was 2D. So they're standing side by side, but one's much smaller and looked like he was behind. And so we didn't kill him. So we ran a lot of patrols that were uneventful. Most of my patrols, at least, were uneventful. Doesn't mean they weren't tense, because you're by yourself. There's 4 guys against how many battalions out there? Who knows? I was going somewhere with that. We were up the Quaviet River, and we were on river patrol boats, and they put us in on rubber boats. And the guy that drove the rubber boats, I forget his name, but we called him Captain Crunch, because it was a similar name to Crunch, and he didn't mind. But one of the patrols, we were looking for infiltrators, and we would set up ambushes. And we set up an ambush, the dikes, rice paddy dikes. We were on one side, and who knew what was on the other side? We were looking. And I hear this yelling and screaming and rustling. And what had happened was one of our guys had a snake had crawled up his pant leg, and the snakes there were deadly poisonous. So anyhow, I thought, who the hell is that? Later on, I found out that he became my patrol leader. So I was his assistant patrol leader. He was really a good man. We went on a patrol, and we were taking a break. One of the point man or somebody, the strap on his knapsack broke or came loose. So those 3 were up, dealing with this knapsack, and I was behind about 5-10 meters. And all of a sudden I hear voices. It was like a copse of trees. I hear voices on the other side of them. So I threw a pebble, not well bigger than a pebble, but I threw a stone at Alan, my team leader, and he looked at me. He looked like he was going to kill me. He was really pissed off because it hit him in the head. But then he saw me. He saw my face, and my telling him to shut up. And we got together. We gathered, and we were sitting there with our backs to these trees, to the voices, trying to think about what to do. What the hell are we going to do? So it was like a cartoon with the light going off. So let's throw some tear gas. And so we threw the tear gas and took off running. And Recon is not supposed to be on a ridge line because you have a silhouette that way. But we were on the ridge line. We were hauling ass. And Beer Line called in artillery. So we're running, and he would call artillery on where we are right now. And by the time it got there, we'd be safe. And so we were doing that. He kept calling artillery behind us. Then we made a right turn and kept the artillery going straight. And that's pretty smart. So if somebody was following the burst, the artillery burst, they wouldn't get us. And, another patrol. We were on a hill, and we had been walking. We walked past some animal traps, deadfalls, and so we got to a place where we were observing whatever's going on, and we radioed back. We said, there's activity here. We can see the animal traps. We request to stay an extra night. You couldn't just stay. They were supposed to come out. You couldn't just stay because you got to coordinate everything with everybody. The artillery, you don't want artillery coming on you because they don't know you're there. And so the rear said, okay. So we went, and there was this copse of trees, a trail coming up, and a field on the other side of this copse of trees. Well, one of the other patrol members and I, we went to look for a harbor site, and a harbor site is where we would sleep, and it was never where you were observing because you might have been observed there. And so we're looking for a harbor site, and I look down this hill, and I see it looked like the whole Vietnamese army was showing up. It was marching up, a lot of goddamn gooks. So Alan's a really smart guy. He says, we're going to sit here. We're not going to make a sound. They're going to go past us. We're not going to engage them. Engaging them would have been pretty stupid. And so they get almost up to us and decide this field on the other side of the copse trees, this field would be a great place to take a break and eat lunch. So they did. The field was full of maybe 14, 15 people of these guys. And they were eating, and we're eating, or they weren't eating yet, but they were getting ready. And we were just being still. And then it looked like the leader of that group took off his backpack, and as he turned around, he made eye contact with Alan, the team leader. So Alan immediately fired. As soon as he fired, we all fired. Before that happened, I was sitting there, my back to the copse of trees. That's not true, I wouldn't have my back there. But I was sitting there and on one knee, and a NVA, one of them, basically sat on my foot. He put pressure on my foot. Pretty scary. But I survived. And when we opened fire, I think we killed all of them. And certainly nobody was moving after that. We had been playing dead. And so we run back the other way, and we calling for an extract, and they couldn't find a helicopter, they said, and then they did find a helicopter. And we found this clearing. I said, can you land here? Like, it's too small. So we went back to where the engagement was, and the helicopter landed, and we were scared shitless. And also there was an observation plane covering us, talking about how many muzzle flashes he saw on the other side of this hill. I don't know how many hornets we were out at that time. But we got on the helicopter, we got away with no casualties. And it's a goddamn miracle. So that's about it.
And this was 68, you said? Or 69?
Well, I got there at the end of 67. I was there all of 68. And I went to Recon about August, I guess, of 68. So I was there from August until July.
Okay. So I guess I'll ask some questions.
Sure.
Okay. So, what made you want to join the Marine Corps over other branches, I guess?
Well, there was a draft to that. And I wanted the guy next to me to be reliable. And I didn't trust the draftees. Turned out, after I've been there and worked with draftees, that was a silly notion. They were fine. But that's why I went in the Marines.
Okay, and would you want to describe your early life at all, or like where you were born or anything like that?
Not much to describe. I was born in Baltimore.
Okay.
Went to Catholic school, St. Mark in Catonsville for grade school, and Mount St. Joseph for high school. Went up to Mount St. Mary's for that 1 year of college. I was pretty much a wild child. Back then they had, cops could make spontaneous spot checks. So if they saw you driving, they could stop your car and ask for your driver's registration. And the ACLU put an end to it. But I was driving a 1951 Plymouth convertible, and I couldn't drive up the corner to the mailbox without getting pulled over, so I got pulled over all the time. And the cops that pulled me over were decent people when I didn't feel harassed, but I wasn't going to do anything wrong. I was going to get caught. When the Marines got back, met my wife, married her, raised 4 kids. She died in February. And that's it.
Yeah. Let's see. Do you want to describe your life after what happened? Like, you went to college, you said?
Well, I went to college before that 1 year, but when I got out, I worked in a factory, a paper cup factory, for a couple of years. And got married, and I wanted to work day shift because I was a newlywed. And they wouldn't let me, and in fact, they fired me for making that request because they figured I was going to leave anyway. And so I got a job at a management company, apartment management, just checking up on the maintenance people. And that was a terrible job. I hated that job. I never knew what I was doing. And I did that for a year or maybe 2. Then I got a job at the Sheraton Inn, Baltimore, and I worked every weekend during the day. And then I went to school. That's when I started going back to school. And I went to the community college. Then from the community college, I went to nursing school. And I couldn't stand nursing school. I couldn't stand the patients. School was fine, but the patients I couldn't stand because I'm an idiot. I was expecting them to be normal and friendly, but they were angry because their loved one was in the hospital. So I dropped out of that, went to UMBC as a biology major, and I got my degree there. Before I got my, well, actually, it was after I got my degree, I went to graduate school there, and before I got a second degree, they asked me to be an instructor, which is supposed to be a master's person, and so I did that for a couple of years. And the boss said, "You got to stop this. You're making peanuts. You should be making more money. Finish up your master's and then come back." So, all right. So finished up my master's, and when I finished up my master's, my position was filled. And when I got my master's, the position was still filled. So I applied to Johns Hopkins and got a job in a lab as a lab tech there, and did that for a couple of years. Then the fellow who replaced me left, and so I stepped back in, and then I was there for another 35 years. What else you got?
So can you describe what was your opinion of your commanding officers? I guess what do you feel overall?
All right, I didn't really deal with commanding officers, which is unusual. But I didn't. In Anglico, I worked under an officer in charge. He was a Navy lieutenant, which is the same as an Army captain. And when I got up to Recon, there was a commanding officer there. But I never saw the guy. I wouldn't know that. In fact, there were 5 commanding officers there in the short time that I was with Recon. That's unheard of. As I left, they got a new commanding officer, Alex Lee, who had a Recon background, knew what the hell Recon was supposed to do, and did it right. Because when I was in, we weren't doing it right, you know. And so doing it right, it inserted us. The CO was up in an airplane while we were being inserted, and they'd insert us, and then the CO would be around making sure we were okay, and then leave. You know, it wasn't when we went in, they'd drop us off and leave. It's kind of not that as bad as that sounds. They'd drop us off, and then take off, gain altitude, and then they'd radio to us, "Are you okay?" Or we'd radio to them actually. And I talked to a pilot down at the wall a few years back now. He was a pilot that flew Recon missions, and he said that was the scariest time for a pilot, was waiting for the Recon team to say all clear, because if it wasn't all clear, it was going to be a hot extraction getting them out of there.
And so you were trained in the radio, and so that'd be like the pack radio that you wore on the back, or was that?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a Prick 25, PRC 25.
Okay.
Yeah. There was another name for them, targets, because the antenna was
And then let's see. And then, when you left Vietnam, you didn't have any other response. It was only you left as Force Recon, or you got out as Force Recon. I assume. Okay.
Yeah, when I left in July, and my enlistment was up officially in August. So they weren't going to keep me around. They just let me go when I got back.
Okay. What was how much would you say your equipment weighed in Force Recon? Was it a heavy load of equipment, or was it all?
Yeah, a heavy load. I marveled at how much we carried until I saw these guys in Afghanistan and that other place.
Iraq.
Yeah, they made us look like sissies, with all the stuff they lugged around. But we carried a lot. We carried the radio. I carried 4 frag grenades, 2 smoke grenades, as much water as we could carry, usually about 2 gallons, 300 or more rounds of ammunition, a rifle, and rations. I think that's everything. Yeah.
So, one other thing, when you see a lot of photos in Vietnam of Marines wearing the flak jackets, did you guys wear those or no?
No, we wore them on one patrol. The officer in charge Lieutenant Baker, who was from Baltimore, but I've tried to find him and I can't. But he insisted we wear flak jackets on this one patrol, and we did. But I was glad we did because it was raining, and that flak jacket actually kept us a little warm. So, but it was like a macho thing. We weren't going to wear flak jackets.
Yeah.
You know, we were Recon.
Let's see. And most of your patrol, you said, were all on the beaches, you said? Or for most of them? Or was it just...
First ones.
The first ones.
But
Okay.
no, we were deep we were on the Laotian border a lot of the time. We couldn't go into Laos. But we were looking at the map one time on patrol, and one of us said, wait a minute, that's the border, that's the Laotian border. And we looked at it and said, holy Smith, you're right. So we all crossed the border and took a leak. With that guy, we were going to piss in Laos, and we didn't. But otherwise, no. And there were units, I believe, that did, but we didn't.
Mm-hmm. And, let's see. Sorry, I have a bunch of pages of questions.
That's all right.
And everyone in Force Recon carried the M16, was that correct? Or were there different varieties of weapons that were used?
Most of us carried M16s. Some people actually carried the M14 still. They wouldn't give it up, which has more hitting power, more knockdown power, but it's heavier than shit. You know, we carried 300 rounds of M16 rounds. If that was M14 rounds, it would weigh down. But other people carried shotguns, and some people carried the M79 grenade launcher. Yeah, I think that's all. And shotgun. Somebody actually, there were people who carried an M60 machine gun, which I always thought was kind of excessive, but they did. But the riflemen carried the M16.
Yeah. And, I'll leave a few more questions. What did you do for like entertainment during? Did you have times to like when you were on like base or something where you like did like entertainment stuff?
Yeah, we were on base, and sometimes I would bring in entertainment. Mainly we played cards, and if we had the money, we'd go in town to get laid.
And then, did you have any like favorite music artists of the war, or songs, or anything? Or
There are a lot of them, and you probably know already what they were. You know, we got to get out of this place. I'll be home for Christmas. That was one. Steppenwolf, he was popular. Yeah, you know, it was a typical '60s rock.
yeah.
Yeah.